Welcome back, everyone, to another session. As you can see, we have some tournament content again. Those are some games that we still had in our archive. Guess the name of this playlist, and we wanted to record them. There were always some other things that had prior. Nonetheless, we kept those matchups because we thought they were quite interesting. Both sides playing interesting commanders. We have a couple of more series that we will show along the weeks. Ertai is a card that was very popular for quite some time. It was played in various iterations, mostly featuring Jace combo before Tazigo was released and way back before Glab was printed. This was the go-to Dimir Jace combo deck. People also played it in a stormy fashion, and then of course you have the Parallax Nexus and the Parallax Tide combo inside, which is very good and can be quite frustrating to play against that. We might see the Nexus coming around next turn here. Ertai player has it in hand. On the other side, fighting against Aang, that is making use of his commander. On curve, Long Goodbye says can't be countered, but Airbend doesn't care about that. I'm a big fan of Aang in the command zone now that Spider-Man is gone. It's definitely an interesting decision again. I think it's the top commander for Azorius Tempo. There is King T'Challa, and King T'Challa is certainly a contender. However, I think it's more of a sideboard card to, swap against matchups that are drawing lots of cards, mostly control, I would assume. And then you have the two-sided Fairy Mastermind, and you're drawing two cards off of a Preordain all of a sudden and stuff. It's a good card, and I assume that people play it because of the card advantage aspect that Aang is not providing. Then again, here you have the Water Bend ability that I think players make use of from time to time, but it is a much better finisher in comparison to the backside of King T'Challa, I assume. I haven't touched King T'Challa yet, but if you look at face value, paying 6 mana for, I think it's a 3/3 flash or 4 maybe. I hope it has 4. Double strike with some effect that is, in comparison to how much mana you pay, relatively fair, I would say. And I would assume it doesn't happen too often, since you can still respond on your opponent paying the 6 mana and trying to transform the hero. So here we have an attempt to cast the Long Goodbye from Exile for 2. And then we have an Aven Interrupter coming down, which plots the spell. So again, it comes back. The spell is exiled. So again, can't be countered, doesn't matter. Aang wants to keep up the pressure, which makes sense in that situation. There is a Flare of Denial, Cryptic Command, and a Takenuma in Ertai's hand. Parallax Nexus definitely being a good one here. Discarding 4 cards, basically. And for those of you who are not familiar with how the synergy works, now the last trigger goes on stack. So the card would be put into the grave, or is put into the graveyard, and then the leaves the battlefield trigger goes on stack, which Ertai is trying to counter by casting his commander. You would even draw a card off of that, since you are the owner of the trigger. But there is a daze. So some pretty good draws here on Aang's side, to be honest. We have to be fair about that. Gaining back 5 cards, that's definitely good. But still maintaining the pressure, especially now that there are 3 creatures on board. And there is no sweeper. I mean, the Cryptic Command could do something, but Ertai is also looking at a loose focus as well as a mana leak. So it's very unlikely that this Cryptic Command would resolve. There's also no cheap blue mana creature that you could cheat in order to make use of the flare. The loose focus replicate basically loses you the game. And I think we are very close to a concession here, going over to game 2. which is the case. Okay. So, Ertai on the play. We're looking at a counterspell, Mana Leak, Abhorrent Oculus, I think, and 3 lands, 4 lands. Yeah. Seems right. Oh, it's a mental misstep. Never mind. Okay. Definitely well placed. The top of a Guide of Souls. Guide of Souls is stepping into the abyss. Yeah, basically, I'm not sure. Like, I would be curious, guys. What is your opinion on playing Azorius over Aragon? I haven't touched Aragon for quite some time, and for the more passionate viewers, you know that I lost interest in playing the deck. Excuse me, simply because I think it's not at the top of the format anymore. I think during the past 2 or 3 years, Magic has made some tremendous development towards being faster and faster. And these days, I think, I mean, the Jeskai card pool is really good. Nothing against that. And it's still super fun. If you want to go for a mid-rangey tempo game plan, then you can still go for Aragon. It's still a very powerful commander, but it's not as crazy as it was back then. And that's partly due to how the metagame developed, I would say. Some of you might have an educated guess here. I haven't touched Aang for too long to make a decision whether or not I would prefer Aang over Aragon. I think just out of curiosity, I would touch the pile at some point again. I would say everyone agrees that the Azorius card pool is really, really strong. We know that the white card pool is really, really strong, was pushed quite a lot during the past months or even years, to be honest. We see that in the omnipresence of Cloud and Failure and other white decks. By the way, if you're interested in the current tier list of white decks in Duel Commander, head over to our previous tier list where I talked about the top 5 decks together with Samuel. And here we have a consult start chart looking at the subtlety, Oculus, animate that. That's not too bad. So the Thraben Inspector is relatively cute, I would say. We're looking at Psychic Frog, Archmage's Charm, Link to Dust, and 2 black cards that I cannot identify. So I quickly had to grab a glass of water. I apologize. The player decided to... No, the Lauren revealed was drawn. I think it's an animate dead. Could be an animate dead. Psychic Frog being a good lad. One of the most scary creatures that you can play against red base decks, I would say. Whenever you do not have access to white and black removal and also no counterspells, then this guy is very troublesome. Since you can just negate bolt and shock damage by discarding cards. And all of a sudden you have like a very big frog down to the ground that is drawing cards. You even give it flying if you want. Very good card. I would love for Wizards to make another Modern Horizon set, but I think that the majority of players might disagree with that. Just that I like... It's not about the power creep so much, but rather about how the power creep is designed and, you know, put, or like, how would you say that? Yeah, how it's actually, how the cards actually end up within our Magic the Gathering universe and not being something that's called Spider-Man or Ninja Turtle whatsoever, and I think that's what I'm actually looking for, and that's what I like about this set. A Voice of Victory on the other side. Okay, the player responds with a Cling to Dust. Drawing another card. There's an Opposition Agent. But I'm still not entirely sure about the second black card. But we will find out soon, I guess. An Oust for the Psychic Frog. Okay, that's a relatively good answer, I would say. Not too impactful. I'm not sure if I would run Raven Inspector and Novice Inspector in a deck like that. I feel like the impact of playing those 1-drops is not good enough, because you always have to, these days you don't even run those cards in failure. That's more because I think they compete with many other 1-drops that are much more valuable. But in a deck like Aang, you always have to think about. I get behind why players play those cards, but for 3 mana, having a 1/2 that draws a card is not good enough in a deck like this, I would say. Then again, you have this lineup of playing those guys on turn 1. Your opponent doesn't do anything, and you can keep your counterspell. You crack the clue, you draw another card. Yeah, that's cool, but you played a 1/2 creature that doesn't do anything for that, and I don't quite like that. I think Aang needs to play more things, more powerful things. You want to play a mother, you want to play a guide, stuff like that. So here we have quite a few good cards. There is an Oculus coming down, as well as a Demonic Tudor that is looking for something. Could be anything. You could go for the Parallax Tide here. I think that's what I would do, simply because the big 5/5 is definitely something that Aang has to deal with. Honestly, it's not the best play. You kind of force your opponent to bring down the Aang, but if you want to recast it from exile for its airband, you would have to exile another 6 cards, which currently is not possible for Ertai. And that makes it less of a threat, I would say. And since the voice is down, he can also not interact with a subtlety and stuff. So yeah, I think I would have probably aimed at casting the subtlety on the voice just to gain better control of that situation, even if you don't have something in hand right now. I think it's a Dowdy, and then still the mysterious black card. We will see. I mean, you can also yeah, since Oculus goes into exile, you can't make use of the Animate Dead either. It's not directly countered. So I think that's one of the better lineups for Aang here. And that's what they are about to go for. Then you can attack with the voice. 1 token will be blocked, or the voice itself, and you deal at least 2 damage. So not too bad. Very curious to see when it's time for a banned deck to come back. Whenever I see those kind of decks, I think about the times in which Genara was played. I don't know who has lived through that era. Okay. Even going for a direct exile on the Oculus, I think that is a bit of a waste here. Honestly, I'm not sure if the Aang player knows about the fact that the airband would have done the job already. Pitching the Aven Interrupter. Yeah, I mean, with 5 mana, you cannot do both. You cannot play the bird and Aang, but you could have kept up the March for something more useful. Because you still don't know what a DT went for. And now, if the player would have decided to go for a Parallax Tide with some counter backup, then you're pretty much screwed, because then you're reliant on dealing 2 damage a turn, and he went for the Parallax Nexus instead. I don't like it that much. I don't like it that much, because Aang is, on average, not playing that many lands. And I think it would be better to go for the land base here, because then you simply can't cast spells. While, you know, you have the 3/2, does some damage. Here we have a loose focus. Okay, that's definitely a good one. And it does something, I would say. You can still decide to pay the 4. And yeah, I mean, the subtlety is shut down. I think you should pay the 4 mana, even if it costs you the entire turn. I'm not quite sure how many cards Aang has in hand, but you went for that already. Opposition Agent is not too crazy here, honestly. Also one of those cards that you want to play in decks like that. And it's definitely good to do so, but sometimes the card is just awkward. You always want to play that into a fetch land right now. You can't really make use of those instant situations for as long as the voice is around. Okay. Decides to put it into the graveyard. And then for 4, probably playing the Ertai killing voice. Yeah, that's a fair consideration. So what is Aang doing on the other side? I mean, you could have also, yeah, maybe the Parallax Nexus was just a bait to see if the opponent has some counter magic for it, because the priority was to get rid of the voice. I'm not sure if the subtlety has a pitch. I think it has not. There are 3 cards in hand, 2 are black, and the subtlety is the only blue one. Okay, here we see a Quantum Riddler. That's a cool synergy together with Aang. So basically the warp spells or evoke and stuff like this, whenever you cast a spell for less mana than intended, you can airbend it, and next turn you can play it for only 2 from the exile zone. But it's not what the player is going for. And it was an animate dead, okay. So here seems to be a short debate. Not sure if... Yeah, maybe it's like the Quantum Riddler is on stack, holding Prio, casting the click, because apparently there were no cards drawn yet. Okay, and now that happened, since he only had 1 card in hand, Quantum Riddler would draw 2. Not so sure if the click here is correct, but we will find out. Maybe just wanted to see whether or not they are dying against some more nasty lines next turn. The animate dead is getting back voice at best right now, which wouldn't be a very good idea, simply because Aang can just exile the voice and recast it for 2. So there seems to be a judge call, because they changed or stopped the clock actually. We will find out. Interesting battle so far. A couple of things happening on both sides. Not sure. I think personally I would lean more into the... Okay, and he goes for the animate dead on the voice. I think that's a mistake. I think that is a net -1 for the Ertai player. Maybe he wants to force the opponent to bring down Aang. That's okay. I can understand that. But what for? Right? Because there's no other power play in hand. Okay, there is a counterspell for that. Yeah, that's fine. So with that in mind, he has another turn in which the voice stays on field, and then Aang has to decide whether or not to cast his commander again, paying 5 to gain back the voice, while Ertai still maintains the board pressure. But there's a failure. And failure is a really cool card. Definitely has a good synergy in combination with Aang, I would say. Keeping some nasty things off of the board. Here comes in an opposition agent end of turn. Now we're looking at 8 lands and 0 cards in hand. So the draw has to do something. It's a Mystic Confluence, it seems. That's not too bad. That's actually a pretty good draw, I would say. You can at least get rid of the failure and draw 2 cards and swing in with the rest of the gang. You can also wait until your opponent's turn and see if they would try to cast a Quantum Riddler or cast Aang to get back the voice. There are various decisions here. I think what you always go for is just attacking with those creatures. The voice has 0 power, but still you should go for because of the tokens, which means he is attacking with 6, 8, 10. Thalia blocking 1 token. And the Raven Inspector is sacrificing himself. So, damage is dealt. I'm not sure. I think the Mystic Confluence is doing very powerful things here. Unfortunately, he's 1 mana short in order to bounce back Ertai in the process of casting this spell. You know, now you can maybe counter something big coming down. I think you should... Failure is also another card that would bring back the voice, which... yeah, makes it even more awkward. I didn't think about that. So Aang is out of the race, not needed right now. And we have a Giver of Runes coming down. But the trigger is on stack. Yeah, your opponent can still react to the trigger. This might result in a judge call, I guess. So it's a delayed trigger that failure applies. Goes on the stack again. And you could still react to that. Yeah, it seems to be a judge call. Now the game resolves. Or continues further. We have the Mystic Confluence. That is going to bounce the Giver. Okay. Bounce Giver, draw a card, another judge call. But now we have it. Alright, so what is happening? Bouncing Ertai, bouncing Giver, drawing a card. Interesting. And then still on stack, found himself an intuition. That's not bad. But it seems not to resolve. There's a No More Lies. That's a very good counterspell. Okay. Now you probably want to get rid of failure here, I assume. I mean, you can go for combat and see what your opponent is trying to block with. Oh, the subtlety is taking care of Ertai. That's difficult now. I don't know what's the remaining card. It's a land. No, not Takanuma. Watery Grave. Yeah, but now I think the situation is very difficult. You can just trade with the opposition agent by sacrificing your click, right? And then your opponent is left with a manifest token and you have a Quantum Riddler next turn. They presented you basically, yeah. Maybe it was the hope that they would trade with the click, but it's actually lethal on board. So there's the handshake, and it's a GG, a clean 2-0 from Aang. Thanks a lot for tuning in, guys. And we will see each other in the next one. Bye-bye.